Alright, guys. What is up? Driving, running an errand. It's almost 7 p.m. on Saturday. Just kind of chilling. The weather cooled way down. It's kind of chilly out. Got a nice beachy breeze going on. But I kind of wanted to talk about a religious theme topic that I think is interesting. I think you guys might like this. Maybe. Let's see. So I came across a David Litwa video. I'll post the link, but I don't remember how old it was. It's about an hour long. I think the guy he was posting with, I don't know if it was Gnostic Informant or Myth of something, I can't remember. But anyways, these guys, I think I've posted before. I've watched them separately before. They post a lot of biblical content, biblical history content. David Litwa he's a professional intellectual type. I think he's a researcher, historian, something along those lines. And I liked this topic a lot because it talked about the early church, and that's a topic that I really love. And a lot of times when I talk about the early church, as far as what I'd learned in history, which I'd never thought about up to this point, some of the topics they mentioned that I'm going to talk about here, the early church usually has topics related to how shall we say, topics related to like how I've talked about early Jewish Christians, early Jewish people who were practicing a form of following Jesus as a Jewish Messiah. Not Messiah, that's the wrong word. I meant to say following Jesus as a Jewish rabbi. And following a form of Christianity or a form of Judaism, basically. Like before the non-Jewish people were introduced to this religion, before it became a non-Jewish offshoot and became some other thing that we now have as modern Christianity. So I've often focused on how it looked when it was more Jewish looking, but I'd never thought to look at things pre-Bible, any New Testament. Like what did the early church look like? Let's say death of Jesus until, I think in that podcast episode I was listening to, they were talking about the 2nd century. So 2nd century, you know, how there were no Christian writings, there was no New Testament, there was no canon, there was no idea of the Trinity. There weren't really a lot of people, I don't think, historically writing about Christians. There were some writings, but it's not what we have today. There were no epistles from Paul. There were no gospels. And then the early churches, I think they mentioned like some of the early churches didn't even really follow the Old Testament because they just didn't really, like, if they weren't Jewish and there was no New Testament yet, but there were people who weren't Jewish, why would they follow the Old Testament? Like, that's a Jewish book. And I know there's different names, the Hebrew scriptures, whatever you want to call it. But it's a different book. Like, it's a different religious book. So that was something that had maybe never come to my attention, that, what did Christianity look like for early Christians that were not of a Jewish background before Paul's writings? Because there was a time where Paul's writings didn't exist yet. And they brought up some good questions, like, how did Paul's writings become so popular? Like, who kept them? Who was in charge of the safekeeping of these writings to the churches? Were the churches keeping them? Did Paul keep copies of his own writings? Just a whole lot of questions that are truly hard to find answers to. But just a lot of questions, mainly about these early groups, these early people, these early Christians, and how they look different from what things look like now. What is the difference? And why are they so different? Like, why is there so much variety now? When you think of Christianity now, it looks so weird and different, and there's so much variety going on, and it's hard to, like, when they brought that up, I was like, that's a good point, because, like, yeah, there were early Christians that weren't Jews, so what were they doing, and what did they focus on, and what was important to them? What's this place? Sounds like live music. Can't tell if that's live music. I'm looking out for live music spots this summer, trying to find some spots to chill. But yeah, what was going on with these early groups? Like, they didn't believe the same things that Christians believe today. I mean, they couldn't believe the same things if there was no writings from Paul, if there was no Gospels. Like, what were they following? Or if they just had a couple of the books, couple Gospels by a certain point, like, and if they weren't following the Old Testament, like, what were they doing? It's like, what were they doing then? Like, what did they, and I don't think the episode really focused on what these people were doing, but I mean, like, what does Christianity look like without an Old or a New Testament? And they're following Jesus, the writings of well, there were no writings of Jesus, but the teachings of Jesus. There's something I want to read. I don't know if it's called the Gospel of Thomas or the Book of Thomas or something like that. That I think it's supposed to be teachings of Jesus or something like that. And there's this, I think I've talked about it before, there's this denomination, I think it's called Preterism or Preterite or something like that. I had a friend that was that denomination, and I think it's called Preterism, and they basically were like, they were pretty much trying to figure out what they were gonna do. So like as far like, I'm sorry, I'm not focusing on what I'm trying to say here. I think they basically look at the, I don't know if they have red letter Bibles, if that's what it's about, but if you think about red letter Bibles, their denomination is focused mostly on what it was that Jesus would have been teaching, what the words of Jesus were. That's kind of their focus of their denomination. So I'm gonna look more into this stuff, see where it leads. But I thought it was interesting because I'm like, what do people think? You know, what does the history look like here? Because it really isn't all that clear. But I'm where I need to be. I did not think it was only going to take like 10 minutes to get here. I'm going to buy what I got to buy, and then I've got other stuff to do. But just a short episode for now. Thanks for listening.